Oh, hey, look. Chuck's back. He's still a goddamn asshole. Welcome back to reading every X-Men comic ever. This week is all about New Mutants, as I read issues 47 through 57, as well as the third annual, which are the 11 issues between Mutant Massacre and our next event, Fall of the Mutants. These are actually an important batch of issues, because issue 54 is the end of Chris Claremont's run as writer, with Louise Simonson taking over from there. And also, this is the first batch I owned the entirety of, which is pretty cool, honestly, and I was able to read them all physically. I'm going to try something a bit different today. And instead of focusing on the recap of the stories, I want to try and focus more on my thoughts on these issues and arcs. There will obviously still be some recapping, obviously, but I want to try and cut back on how much of the video is plot recaps, and also get better at expressing my thoughts. First off, predictably, was the Magus arc, which encompasses issues 47 through 50. This arc is kinda crazy. I did not expect time travel, multiple alternate futures, a limbo rebellion, or the return of Chuck and the Starjammers. The first issue is alright, however, I think the consequences of it are more interesting than the actual main plot itself. Ending up in 13th century Ireland and meeting Robert the Bruce is neat, and Roberto facing his fears of Limbo and Ileana in an attempt to save her from demons is a nice character beat. From there, we move on to the next two issues, both of which deal with alternate futures. Roberto, Amara, Rain, and Chan are in Days of Future Past timeline, or at least something really similar. They don't specify that it is Days of Future Past, but it's close enough. Meanwhile, Danny, Sam, Doug, and Warlock are in this reverse Days of Future Past timeline, where the mutants rule and the humans are treated as subhuman. I've always been a sucker for alternate universes and timelines, and while I like both stories, I do find the latter one a bit more interesting. I think it's partially because we haven't seen it before, so everything feels a bit more fresh and engaging. I really enjoy the lore that's scattered about how the world got to this place, with the assassination of Chuck and Magneto joining the Hellfire Club being key factors. Another thing I like is the use of the New Mutant members from the opposite teams within the opposite stories. For example, with this one, we have the fucked up evil Roberto and Amara as antagonists, but even the other book has these kind of grizzled, beaten down versions of Sam and Danny, which honestly were the most interesting part of the book. I think it's just a really creative use of those characters while also expanding the supporting cast of each of the individual stories. My one gripe, however, why is Katie Power here? Why is Katie the one pre-existing hero that keeps showing up in these X-Men stories? This is like her third or fourth appearance in an X-Men book, and it's just weird that she keeps showing up, especially here. The Days of Future Past team got Lila, which makes sense. She has the direct connection to the New Mutants, and especially the future ones used in that story. I feel like a more appropriate character, or characters, I guess, to appear to Sam and company would have been Cloak and Dagger, or one of them at least, since they already have a connection to the New Mutants, but especially Roberto, and it could have been an interesting dynamic. This doesn't really affect my thoughts on the stories as a whole, but it's just weird. From there, we move on to issue 50, which is easily one of my favorite issues of the arc, and also probably one of my favorites of the entire series. Now, is that mainly because there's a lot of focus on Ileana, who is one of my favorite X-Men characters? Yeah, probably. But there's still a lot beyond that I enjoyed, such as the return of Chuck and the Starjammers, who we haven't seen since issue 201 on Uncanny X-Men. Well, that's not true. It did show up in Classic X-Men, and if you were reading these in proper numerical order, unlike I did, they were also in 203 briefly. So maybe they've been around more than I thought. Nonetheless, it's nice to see Chuck and the gang again. The way Charles speaks and interacts with the other characters is something I really enjoy reading, because he has this genuine concern for those around him, but at the same time, he can be a grade A certified asshole who doesn't listen to anyone else but himself. Now, we don't get a lot of the latter in this issue, but don't worry, he will more than make up for it in the next one. My favorite scene with Chuck in this book is his brief conversation with the alt future Roberto. I think it's just a really fun, well written scene, and kind of we get a reminder of Chuck's thoughts on mutants and how they should be treated. This being the last issue of the arc, we do obviously get the regrouping of the New Mutants and the defeat of Magus. And said defeat is actually pretty neat, since it's established that Magus was way out of the skill level of a one-on-one fight. Even as a team, they instead, with the help of Chuck, just hit him with the infinite age regression code. I will say though, I do wish Warlock got a bit more of a spotlight in this arc. I know we kind of covered his whole deal in his first appearance, and he has a few small moments here and there, but I think it would have been nice to have a couple of bigger moments throughout the arc, focusing on him, giving him some proper build up and development. That way, the big emotional moments in issue 50 don't feel as abrupt as they do. Instead of Warlock, Ileana gets a lot of the spotlight in terms of character development this issue, and like I said, it kind of made the issue for me. What I really love is her talk with Charles about who she is. It's just such a heartbreaking look at the character. She so desperately wants to be a normal girl, the girl she was before Belasco intervened, for no other reason than the people around her. But she knows she can't be that, because that's not who she really is anymore. She could never truly be happy or herself living a lie like that, no matter how ashamed of it she is. We also get the reveal, or not really a reveal, more like an acknowledgement, I guess, that Ileana thinks of the professor as her father, which I'm not super into, but it does kind of make sense. He is the only consistent, positive ish role model he has had outside of her brother, although I feel like positive may be a bit of a stretch in both of those cases. And I do wonder if she feels that way after the events of the next issue. Speaking of New Mutants 51, it is primarily the aftermath of the arc. It gives us enough downtime for Chuck to learn everything that's happened since he left, like the massacre and X Factor being formed, and debates going back to Earth with the kids. However, the decision of that debate is forced on him when the ship is attacked, and he chooses to stay behind. Like I mentioned before, this issue is a nice reminder of how big an asshole Professor X is. He essentially forces Karma to take control of Ileana not just once, but twice, despite both Danny and Karma's reservations. And Ileana's, obviously. While I understand that he did it the second time to get the kids out of danger, and there wasn't really time for a conversation about this, that doesn't change the fact that not only is this a giant betrayal of trust, but also a blatant abuse of power, and probably some form of assault. So I think Ileana's response at the end of the issue is extremely fucking reasonable. This leads directly into the next issue, where Ileana debates on who she really is and if she should even stay on the team, or instead just accept the demonic part of herself and fight the transmoded Sim to save Limbo. For some additional context, back in issue 47, Magus actually got to Limbo, and so when the team left and got to Ireland, Magus was there and stayed and transmoded not only all of the beings, but the entire like land and dimension as well. And so ever since, whenever Ileana gets to Limbo, she's been fighting for her life to save the realm, primarily against Sim, who seems to be like the leader and someone who can't die. Her stated reasonings for leaving are that her brother and her best friend, Colossus and Kitty, the two people who she had to keep her anchored to the real world, are comatose or dying. But I definitely feel like the events of the last issue didn't help in this decision. Magneto really comes through for her here, though. I really adore this conversation, as short as it is, because I think Magneto really understands Ileana in a way that no one else has, and is able to connect to her and really show her the right path. Before we move on to the next issue, I gotta say, this issue, more than any others, is giving me big Tatiana vibes from Magic. Maybe that's just because I'm already aboard the Kitty Ileana romantic ship, and I think they would just be a great match for each other. So I'm reading into it more than maybe most people would. But I gotta be honest, I do think that Demon Girl's in love with her best friend slash roommate. Clement's final two issues see Megs bring the kids to a Hellfire Gala where they meet the Hellions again, and tensions are as high as ever. This results in, as predicted, the two teams deciding to face off, this time in some sort of scavenger hunt, which the New Mutants lose. I should mention that by this point, the Fallen Angels miniseries has started, so Sunspot and Warlock have both technically left the team for the time being, and we will see why and what they're doing in a couple weeks when we get to that series. These issues, however, were pretty good, but I can't lie, I was hoping for something a bit more exciting for Claremont's last outing. I mean, we do have Doug's crazy ass dream where he kills everyone, but that's only like the first 3 pages. That said, there is still plenty to like here, especially the interactions between the opposing teammates. John and Danny, as the leaders, having a civil conversation about the teams, Wolfsbane and Cat's Eye being the only other amicable pair, but still end up getting into mischief. Doug blowing off one of the Hellions only to go play poker and get drunk with the other one. And nobody deciding to kill Empath on the spot, unfortunately. Within this, we do get the unexpected return of the New Mutants costumes from X-Men Annual 10. This time, though, the costumes do have some slight changes. Mainly Magic is now red instead of white, Cypher is blue instead of silver, and Danny has pants, or like leggings. However, I don't know if she's supposed to, considering Danny herself mentions that she is cold because she isn't wearing pants. So this may be a consistent coloring mistake, or a coloring change that they didn't have time to write around. I don't know. At the end of this, we also get Karma officially leaving the team out of concern for her siblings who went missing back in issue 46. I'm not super shocked by this. Her siblings have been her main motivation for being at Xavier's since she came on board, so I can understand that finding them is her top priority. She also hasn't done much since she's returned, so not shocked she's leaving. Maybe we'll see her later down the line. I honestly don't know where Karma ends up after this, so excited to find out. That all brings us to issue 55, and like I mentioned in the beginning, this is where Louise Simonson takes over as lead writer. And these first 3 issues of his are good, but not. This first issue is honestly kind of pointless. Well, pointless is the wrong word, because I don't think any issue of a series, much less a well written series like this one, is pointless. There's always something worthwhile that happens in an issue, whether it moves along a larger plot or not. I just don't know the right word to use in this scenario. Basic, maybe? Or standard? I don't know. I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually. But they all go to Lila's party. Sam does drugs. They fight some aliens. That's kind of it. I mean, it is nice to see them do normal teen things, and we get more Sam and Lila, which is nice, but nothing else beyond that really stands out to me, other than Alderaan being canon to Marvel. Maybe they had a better fate here. These next 2 issues have the New Mutants head out to rescue a bird creature thing and end up fighting against the Hellions for it. This time, the team actually wins and end up taking it back to the mansion, where Rain takes a liking to it. They then decide to take the bird boy out to the mall, which goes as well as you expect before Doug realizes he never actually tried to talk to the thing, where they can actually get some information on him. The really big change in these issues is Amara leaving the New Mutants and joining the Massachusetts Academy, and in turn, the Hellions. I'll be honest, I knew this was coming. I didn't know when it was coming, but I knew Amara was going to leave. But even then, I'm not exactly sure this would be a big shock to those who didn't know. Amara has never really gotten any spotlight or development after her introductory arc back when the series began, so she's just kind of been a member of the team with fire powers. This results in me, and probably other readers as well, if I had to guess, never really connecting with her in the same way we have the others, and I think that's a shame, because I think she had potential to be a good audience surrogate and an interesting character, maybe having these fish out of water moments, exploring modern society after living what is essentially ancient Rome for the first half of her life. I don't know. But that's not what we got. Maybe this is set up for a subplot of her at the Hellions, but I'm not getting my hopes up. At the same time, however, she is in love with Empath. So, honestly, go to riddance. The final book for today is New Mutants Annual 3. Now, this is actually Claremont's final time as a solo writer on a New Mutants book, as it released in July of '87, 2 months after his final single issue. However, it takes place between issues 51 and 52. I'm just going to say it. This book's kind of stupid. The Impossible Man's back, and he goes Warlock into a fight, and then mutants follow them, trying to keep things from getting worse. It's fine for what it is, but it is a downgrade from the last two annuals, which actually had to affect the universe in some way and introduce new characters to the grander X-Men mythos, such as Lila, Psylocke, and Mojo. With that, Claremont's run is complete. And man, what a run! I mean, it's genuinely the best ongoing I've read so far in this series. It started off super strong with the graphic novel and those initial issues. Then we had the Hellions, Demon Bear, and Legion arcs pretty much back to back to back. And after that, we had the resurrection of the team post Secret Wars 2, and ending off now with the Magus arc. And that's not even mentioning the first two annuals and the special edition issue. Everything in between what I just mentioned is also really damn good too. So I can only hope that Simonson lives up to the bar that Claremont set. These first three issues, while good, didn't super impress me, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially since we are heading directly towards the next big event. That said, however, I'm still super excited to see what comes for these characters and this team. Now, I know you guys might be expecting me to do ranking breakdowns for the individual issues at this point, but I'm gonna forgo that for a while. Now, I still plan on doing the completed series rankings when that comes up, but these individual rankings have just been increasingly difficult to talk about in an interesting fashion and even transition into, especially for a section that I don't imagine most people watching find engaging or interesting. Now, I would like to bring back the individual rankings eventually, but I just need to find a way to incorporate them better. But let me know in the comments what you think, and if you actually did like the individual rankings. Next week, however, we check back in on X Factor, and also the Devil makes an appearance. So, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you then.